You're listening to The Conversation with Model Mind AI, a weekly check-in with Angela Schultz and Lauren Horsager on how to lead through change, stay curious, and get AI ready.
Welcome to The Conversation, a podcast from Model Mind AI about how artificial intelligence is reshaping the way we work, lead, and think. I'm your host, Angela Schultz, curriculum developer and trainer here at Model Mind. Over the past year, I've had so many conversations with teams trying to figure out where AI fits in their business. Some are experimenting with Copilot or ChatGPT, and others are holding back, uncertain where to begin or what AI readiness even means. So as we dive deeper into today's topic, I'd like you to start to think about this. What is your biggest challenge in becoming AI ready? Is it strategy, developing the plan, or training, equipping your team with necessary skills and knowledge? Potentially data. Is your data accessible? Is it high quality? And then finally, leadership alignment. Do you have buy-in and support from your organizational leaders? These challenges often determine your success of AI integration. So at Model Mind, we help business leaders integrate AI in a way that's thoughtful, strategic, and actionable. Stick around for our prompt of the week. And as always, drop your questions in the chat. We'll answer a few before we close today. Joining me is Model Mind CEO, Lauren Horsager. Welcome, Lauren. What do you see as the most common challenge companies face when they begin their AI readiness journey?
That's a great question to start this off. This is the first one in our series of this, and we're trying to provide a helpful way for organizations to think about AI. We have been training and coaching, like Angela said, and we see a lot of disparity, I will say, across how people are approaching this problem, right? Or where they're at in the process. So I think when we look at this, we, like I said, we do a lot of coaching and training. So we see companies that are completely all over the place of what they want to do and where they're at. That can range from smart companies that are thinking about governance, because governance is a big issue. And it's, I think it's settled down a little bit from where we were 6 or 12 months ago for what the risks were. But it's a big deal, right? So how do they think about that governance? How do they get their team up to speed? How do they actually approach the problem and actually make this usable? There's all this hype about what's the value of AI? It's going to take all of our jobs and going to do all these things. Well, how is it going to actually do any of that? I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I think we've seen some of the numbers that are, more jobs are expected to be created from AI than are lost. There is some change in that process of what people are doing, though, right? So I think it's affecting a lot of people in different ways, and we want to come alongside them and help them as they think about that. As we think about that, we took all of the knowledge that we've had over the last few years of working with clients, and we decided to build our own process to help assess that. So we built a AI readiness assessment, and I don't really like the term readiness in this case, but it's really our tool and how we think about getting from where you're at to where you want to go. And not everybody wants to be in the same place, right? We have companies that are hardcore building their own custom models and stuff, which is really very technical. To we work with nonprofits that are just help me write a grant proposal better, right? So the diversity is out there, and what's important to people is very, very different across job positions and across industries. Break down what are the areas that are important to understand, and then understand where you're at and where you want to be, and realize that you can't really get there in one step, right? So what we did is approach this as what would help us help our clients move in kind of a 90-day rhythm, a quarterly rhythm, to say, where are we at? Where do we want to be at the end of the quarter? And let's make these, reasonable increments to actually get there. And, a year or two in, we're going to be in an amazing place with what our capabilities are. So we broke that down into these 6 areas. The first is governance. And I think this is obviously a very critical one. And we see this really critical in, especially like what you think about all the stories about large language models that have provided some crazy response, or they're taking your data and now you're not, you don't own your data anymore. And the large language models, the popular ones, that's become less and less of an issue because they have process. If you're paying for it, you can control that. If you're not paying for it, you don't own your data. So that's something to be aware of. But it's a bigger issue, a much, much bigger issue with these third parties. So let's say you have a tool that you're already using. Now, what becomes of that when they add AI into that tool? Do you know now what they're doing with your data in that case? I've been on several legal calls where companies have, taken data, added taken my client's data and moved that into a system that wasn't secured properly for the AI benefits. And they're trying to be helpful, but it really opened up a lot of legal issues and a lot of data holes where you're losing control of your data. So that's kind of the first thing we measure. The second thing we measure is employee training and AI literacy. And I think this is really critical. This is kind of the focus for our organization, is really bringing people along in this process. We see so often that this is not a top-down decision. So the top-down decision, as you think of this from a leader in your organization, is to say, we're going down this path. But ultimately, the good ideas on implementation mostly come from your business users on what they're dealing with every day. It's fascinating. We see this over and over and over again as we're working with clients, that it's once people are trained up and now they have the aha moment of, oh, I can actually automate this, or I can simplify this with AI and build a huge efficiency here that we didn't even realize was possible. So this is one of the benefits of training up your team, is that once they understand how to use this and how to use it in their daily life, that's kind of the first step of the process. But now, how do you actually do that bigger, where we're going to simplify a process or build something that's going to help a whole team, right? And that's where that becomes interesting, and it's all because of training. I'll share a little story here. I have a friend, Nicole, who we were driving in the car one day, and I was showing her a demo of a sales app, a sales trainer, and she was driving, and she's not very technical. So I was explaining this, and I had it on my phone, and I could actually talk to my phone. And this is all using OpenAI, and I created this demo in like 15 minutes. And she almost drove us in the ditch when she saw this, and she's a salesperson. I'm like, here, you can train up your salespeople, right? And so it's great to go from, when we can go from one step where it's, I want to learn to help me, to now let's help my team and my whole organization. So the reason I bring that up is she went through our training then, and she then went to her company leadership team, and her team won by building this in-house to actually make it a priority for 2025 for their organization to deploy this across the world, actually, as a tool. And it all started because she wanted to learn. She went through the training and then found the option on where that makes sense to implement, right? And I
It's
think you've seen some of
interesting.
the
Yeah, it's interesting to me that you mentioned that she's non-technical and she works in sales. I think that's one of the powerful aspects of AI, is it brings your team to the table and it makes it accessible. You don't need to have that heavy background in tech to play a part in what's happening right now, and to be part of the creation and the decision makers based off of what's available. It's really exciting.
right. Right, and I think the other part of the reason for training, so we focus on not we do both non-technical and technical training, right? And there's kind of a process. As you get deeper and deeper into this, it becomes more technical. But there's several classes that we do that are non-technical, and I think it's interesting. We kind of have to have a bar set as we're training up an organization, so that the way people are communicating inside that organization, the training helps not only helps them save time every day, but now the communication of, hey, we have this idea on how to solve a problem. You understand, and as a team can make decisions on where you put your energy to actually get the most benefit out of it in the collective sense, right? So I think you've seen in training, like you had a guy in training here recently that you can tell about it that um, didn't really pay attention.
Yeah, at first glance, it seemed like he was a little removed from all the activity that was happening in the room. But about midway through the training, all of a sudden you could see the spark go off, and he had been using OpenAI for a while, so knew a baseline. But once I got to a point where it was new to him, then I had his attention. So the trainings really are about creating a common language, a common experience, but also kind of showing the capabilities and then along with that the limitations. So to be able to show him something new after using it for several years was really exciting.
Yeah, and so the whole goal of the training is to get a level set and the common language. I like that.
Hmm.
So then the third step of our six tracks for the assessment is workflow integration and automation. And as you'll notice, these kind of build on each other in some ways. And as we think about workflow automations, solutions, this does get more technical, but we still, as an organization, this is where your efficiencies come from. So this can be everything from integrating AI into normal workflows, which we've done a lot of, but it can also be, as we'll talk more about these in the future, agentic systems where the AI is actually making decisions and integrating in with your tools. So there's different approaches to this, but we actually want to think about building these workflows and automations as the foundation to really take the efficiencies and benefits of AI and apply it to your organization. So that's number three. The fourth one we call advanced AI solutions. This is kind of a step beyond that, even. So this gets deeper into the agentic systems. It gets into building your own custom models. Manufacturers will build like defect models that are custom models. And so, how to do that, how to manage those models, how to test those models, those kind of things. So it's another segment that we like to deal with. And for most organizations, not all, but for a lot of the organizations we're dealing with, that's kind of a future thing that we're building towards. So like I said, not all of these are going to be a priority day one if you're just getting into trying to lead in how you take advantage of AI. But that's a more advanced step. The next one is foundational to all these things, which is data and your infrastructure. And I think it's interesting, this is not really new. New data systems and data management has been around a long time, but it goes back to the whole problem of garbage in, garbage out. How do we actually take advantage of our data that we have? And we have a lot of data that we've been collecting over the last year, for several years, that the last 20 years, the amount of data has skyrocketed. But what we do with that, how do we get information out of that, has not been as effective. And there's lots of big data tools to deal with that. AI is having a very, very big impact on this. But the flip side is true as well. We have to think about our data and how we're managing it, how we're collecting it, so that we trust the data that comes out of the AI once it gets there. So I just want to call out, I just read this book, but it's a friend of mine, Jordan Moreau from Act One. He does a lot of work with very large, like Fortune 500 companies. I know he works with Nike and I think some other ones like that. But he has a new book out. I just read. It's called "Be Data Literate," and for people that are just getting into thinking about data from, especially from a use case for how AI is going to interact with that data, I highly recommend that book. Again, it's "Be Data Literate" by Jordan Moreau. It was very insightful and a good entry level book for thinking about data. If you're a data scientist, it's probably not the book for you. So, um, and then our last segment our last track that we measure, we call it strategy and AI leadership. And this is really about the process of implementing AI and how to go to market with AI solutions, how to think about how this impacts your employees, how this impacts your clients, the strategy of leading AI rollouts and that kind of stuff. So that's really our sixth part of the track. And we're really trying to provide all the tools and information to actually make it easier to think about these things and roll these things out. I'm amazed at how many clients we have come to us and say, "Hey, our CEO says we need to roll out AI," and it's like, "Well, why and what?" And they have no idea, right? It's just we got to get on the bandwagon. Well, okay, we're hopeful that this tool helps us kind of break down where should you start and what your priorities are. So that's the assessment. And if you're interested, we'd love to run this through with you. We do it for free. But I think the more important thing about the assessment is it's not a static document. We want to run this every 90 days, and the goal is to help us over the next couple of years or our clients move towards being a more AI driven organization. And that's where we're going to get the impact of AI. So that's kind of how we approach that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I keep thinking about the term assessment, which can feel a bit daunting. It almost feels more of a reflection, and then you're able to kind of, it brings to the surface what you need to do and how you need to get there. So it's a great way to reflect, and each company is going to have their own strengths and weaknesses depending on the industry, depending on the moment in time. So great process to stop and think and make a plan.
But it's also not just they're gonna be ranked differently. It's they're gonna have different priorities, so they should be ranked differently, right? So what's
Mhm.
important to one organization or what's important right now to one organization is not the same as someone else. So we actually bake that into this. So basically, the way the assessment works is there's 35 questions, and those 35 questions we want answered by your AI strategy team, which we recommend is like 5 people generally, and it can be a little larger or smaller or whatever. But so it's kind of a 360 analysis from different people in your organization with different perspectives that are all focused on how are we going to roll out AI. And so we use that to get a more holistic view of the organization. We want some IT people involved in that. We want some business people involved in that, trying to figure out like what's really happening, where is your priorities, and what needs to get focused on, right? So that's kind of how we provide that.
I love that. It's such a great way to just start the conversation as well
Yeah,
and give some clarity and maybe spark some curiosity and get people on the same page. So it's a great tool.
I think there's so much gray area with AI right now, and so our goal is partially just to get that on paper, right? So it's like we can visualize where we're at, we can visualize where we want to be, and then and also get a clear plan on how to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic. I love it. I love it. I think now is
fantastic.
maybe a good time to take a couple audience questions. And so, first up, I see a question that came in. It says, what's a good starting point if our team has different levels of AI understanding? And I think we mentioned this in my training example, where you're going to get a room full of people and they'll all be at different levels. So, where do you begin if everybody's on a different page?
I think what you mentioned earlier is getting the common language. So I think there's two stages to that, right? One is use the assessment to actually figure out if the priority is training up your team, then that should be the focus. And if you're going to train up your team, I think you train up the whole team. And what I mean by that is maybe not your whole company, but maybe your whole company. We do a lot where we've trained up an entire organization, but sometimes it's like this whole team. Like we'll take a marketing team and train them, or a legal team, and train them how to do this. So we'll focus on a specific team that we can then uh, get everybody on the same page. So now when you start to identify some of those, automations that you want to build out of that, everybody understands what they're talking about. Um, the other thing I'll say, and we see this all the time as we go through training, as we do this, our more introductory training, that tends to identify pretty quickly your AI power users. And those are the people that long term, as you want to roll out more custom solutions, more advanced solutions, they're really your advocates and your workhorse to actually help make that happen. So we definitely look for them, and we try to do follow up as our coaching and stuff to stay in touch with them, because it's really that's really what you're looking for, is who are your advocates and your advanced users, or that want to become advanced users. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the solution is?
I mean, to me, the solution is AI, because a big part of what I do when I talk with people is teach them how to use AI to level up their understanding. And so it just makes it accessible. The information is there. They just have to have the willingness and the curiosity. But AI itself is able to teach and learn about what people in each specific industry knowledge they need. So it's really bringing the knowledge to them if they're willing to kind of seek it out and up their game in that way.
Mhm.
So and in class, of course, I see it all the time. I've had people who are logging on for the first time, and then I have other people who are software developers and are creating their own models. So in a way, that's my favorite class to teach, because we're learning from each other and from AI, which is kind of exciting.
Right.
Yeah. Here's another question we hear quite a bit. Is the assessment helpful for small businesses or just larger organizations?
I think it applies to everybody, and that's the goal. Is it's not really just large or just small organizations. And like I said, we tend to do 5 people on the AI strategy team is what we recommend. But we've had up to 9 on a team, and it that works great. It depends on the size of your organization and sometimes the complexity of the organization. Um, but it works on all sizes. So even if you are smaller than that, we have teams of 2 people that we've worked with, and we can still do that process. And you get a holistic view of the whole company in that case, because they're all doing the assessment. But it applies to everybody, because number one is to understand, but it's really about how do we plan out the next 90 days and actually take action. We're a big believer at Model Mind that just learning something, just hearing something doesn't really matter. If we're taking action, that's what really matters. And are we taking the right action? So we want to make
Mhm.
sure we're leading to take action. And that's what the assessment is designed for.
Nice. I love that. Okay, last question, and it's a big one. How do we avoid random acts of AI and stay focused on what really matters? There's a lot popping up in commercials and social media. It's easy to grab onto some of these cool tricks. And so I'm wondering, how do we look past that and really create um, strategy and something that is sustainable?
This is complicated. I think I'm not sure we're going to fully avoid this, but if you have a process and a plan and you communicate that properly, then I think and people know, like, here's what your expectations for tool usage and stuff is and how we're going to review it. I think what's interesting is I get asked very, very often right now, hey, should I use this tool because it has AI built into it now? Not a large language model, but a tool for whatever business that now has AI built into it. And everybody wants to provide me a tool. And I think it's interesting. We do this training because we think there's a lot of tools that really aren't needed, that the AI can do it. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the tool, but the evaluation of the tool, like I would use AI to do the help with the evaluation of the tools, but it's more thinking about what are we trying to accomplish. And this goes back to any normal tool selection process, but it's the same. We just have to apply it, which doesn't always happen. So I think, as that's one of the things that's happening, is that people are putting tools in place that they don't necessarily know how to support or know what the risks are, things like that. um, the second part of that is, it's if unless you have communicated properly, it's extremely difficult to have expectations that your team, like, let's say, we run into this all the time. Your team has been given Copilot access, Microsoft Copilot. but not ChatGPT. But some of these people have been working with ChatGPT, and so they still have their own account. Well, they're going to use their own account. Is that paid for? Is it not paid for? Is it, what's going to happen there? And if you're not communicating properly on what they can and can't do, you are going to have employees using those tools where you might have a risk associated. Like we ran into, we were talking to a company recently, and their whole team, they have Copilot access, but they were given ChatGPT access, and they were mostly using it, but the company wasn't paying for it. So the employees weren't going to pay for it, but they were using the free version, which is a big risk on data risk, because they'll use your data for training and stuff. So it's things like that having a plan helps you actually communicate what you do and don't want to do, and don't want your team to do. But it also helps kind of set the expectation that we're going to be serious about this, and we're going to think about it as a group.
Yeah, that actually transitions really nicely into we've made it to the end where we're going to talk about the prompt of the week, but I've really baked in some of that AI literacy or how to interact with AI. You mentioned ChatGPT and Copilot, and I think this prompt is a bit complex, but it's a great starter prompt for people to use their natural language to collaborate with some of these AI programs that are available. So without further ado, I'm going to present to you the prompt of the week. I hope that you can take this back to your team and it maybe sparks some conversations. So we're going to start the prompt by simply stating, I'm exploring how AI could help my business. Here's what I do. Give a brief description of who you are and what your business is. Then say, help me uncover the most valuable ways to use AI. And finally, what questions do you have for me? Now, I'm going to unpack that just briefly. So always start with the goal. I'm exploring how AI can help my business. Role is really important because the ability to customize the response to you and your industry, the size of your business, the role you play can really benefit in making that plan. And then expectations of help me uncover the most valuable ways to use AI. The way to explore that further is to have ChatGPT or Copilot prompt you back and ask you questions. This is that really collaborative thinking partner that a lot of people are unaware of the capabilities. And so having them prompt you with questions is just going to help you be able to dive deeper and deeper into your exploring AI and its connection to your businesses. So hopefully this prompt is a great reflection tool for you, but it's also a spark, a way to move from being curious to having clarity. And if something sparks for you, send it our way. You can email us at hello@modelmind.ai or tag us on LinkedIn and share with us your either experience with the assessment or the prompt of the week. So before we wrap up, I just want to state the big takeaway from today. And that is AI readiness isn't about tools, it's really about leadership. And when you treat it as a strategic priority, that's when the real progress begins. So whether you're planning next steps, getting your team aligned, or looking for a thought partner, we're here to help you make smarter, faster moves with AI. And next week, Lauren will be joining us again, and he will be diving into track 1 of the assessment, and he will be speaking predominantly about governance and responsible AI. And I feel like this is a way to not only build trust internally, but also externally with your customer facing. So you'll hear more about what strong oversight looks like and why clear guardrails can move innovation, not slow it down. So I'd like to thank Lauren for speaking with us and sharing his insights. And thanks for listening to the conversation. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of the conversation with Model Mind AI. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and stay curious.